Hello everybody, this is another exciting video. Do you know all the boundaries were shattered a month ago by a paradigm which said that a big city was found near Angkor. And previously I suppose it was just this mysterious thing in the jungle. And people don't need to live anywhere in ancient times, as every archaeologist knows. People have wings and they just fly down to earth, build a few ceremonial buildings and fly back up to heaven again. But actually that's not true. And the paradigm is only starting to shift. It's been so easy for archaeologists to publish again and again and again that something is a ceremonial enclosure because that's what's been published before. And it fits. But if it doesn't fit, it's very hard to publish. So everything's ceremonial. And that's the way it is in Britain. A few days ago, this was in the news. Firehenge, I think it's this one here, was discovered. It was a henge that was set alight. And it's near the West Kennet Rings, or the West Kennet enclosure. And I was reading an article about this, and Firehenge, I think somewhere here, I'm not sure. And they were saying that this palisade enclosure here, the West Kennet Pallisade, is a ceremonial enclosure. What the hell is a ceremonial enclosure? I mean, what's going on here? That doesn't make any sense. This is obviously something with a water supply. This is a city. And what I'm saying in this video is, people are forbidden from saying there are any ancient cities at all in Europe, especially in the UK. I don't know, there's something up with the system or something. It's just so strange. And I'm becoming more and more aware of this. Ancient Britain doesn't seem to have any cities. They only say, they say before the Romans, London had 14,000, Colchester had 10,000, that's where old King Cole was. But they really don't want to talk about it. You don't see this in the history books. Why not? And I'll show you this was a city. This was obviously a city. This is so similar to Wrocław or Bratislava or Breslau, the old German Breslau. It's just an amazing city with all these islands and canals. It started down here on these islands, which are beautiful. If you go here at night time, you can see a guy lighting a gas lamp in the old style. These are all church areas now, but they were the city before. Now the city is here. It's the new city, which is now the old city of a larger city. But it's just incredible. They would always build cities on rivers like this, or next to a river. It was a bit of security, a bit of water supply, especially on islands like this during the Dark Ages. It stopped tribes like the Mongols sweeping through and killing everyone if they couldn't get across, and these guys could just hide behind their walls. And this is Dublin. And I was walking around Dublin a few years ago. I was looking for a photo that said, and I'm pretty sure it was somewhere, this is O'Connell Street, the main street, and it was somewhere in that direction. I was walking around and I saw a sign which said Ireland's oldest street. I think it said 50 BC or 300 BC or something, and I was thinking, whoa, this is incredible. And I tried looking it up online, and you can't find a thing. History of Dublin. Dublin can trace its origin back more than 1,000 years. I mean, this is a massive nonsense. And here we have history of Dublin to 795. Look, it says here, the earliest reference to Dublin is sometimes said to be found in the writings of Ptolemy, because he called it Eblana on one of his maps in around the year 140. This would seem to give Dublin a just claim to nearly 2,000 years of antiquity, as the settlement must have existed a considerable time before Ptolemy became aware of it. Recently, however, doubt has been cast on the identification of Eblana with Dublin, and the similarity of the two names is now thought to be coincidental. So all you have to do is say, well, that's a coincidence, and so you can ignore it. But that doesn't make any sense at all. So it is now thought that the Viking settlement was preceded by Christian ecclesiastical settlement, etc., etc. And they don't know when it was founded, but they do know that there were fish traps in the area and it was settled for thousands of years, but they won't call it a city. Which I find very interesting. I find that really strange, really bizarre. And Avebury. What's going on with Avebury? Where's the city? There isn't one. Guess what? They discovered a Roman town under Silbury Hill. Well, of course there's a town there. It doesn't just spring up from nowhere. But do you notice they're calling it a Roman town? Did they really think the Romans built this? What's under the Roman town? And this is Biskupin, another river city. And they found these logs sticking out of the swamp. There's a river. This is a promontory jutting into a river. And this is Poland's Pompeii. It dates to several centuries before Christ, or even earlier. And this is just absolutely unbelievable. It shows what people can do when there's lots of trees around. Now, Ireland was denuded of trees a long time ago. They can't rebuild something like this, but surely they had things like this. And that's yours truly. That West Kennet thing. These are unbelievable. You know, these are apartment buildings for people. Each one has an identical sort of room. It's just unbelievable. And this is the palisade to protect against invaders. So they knew that there were invaders. They set this was a huge community. And you have this stuff in various countries. You don't really see this in the UK. I guess UK hasn't had trees for a very, very, very long time in considerable proportions like the Baltic has, but still, I mean, you don't have nothing like this. And here it is. It's jutting onto the river, and basically the whole thing's on stilts. It's absolutely unbelievable. It was an unbelievable complex, pushing 3,000 years old. And this is what the West Kennet Pallisade would have looked like. Something like this. Something like Biskupin. You see, this is Biskupin. Unbelievable longhouses. Unbelievable. Just huge, enormous. Look, ancient pagan weird stuff. You see this on the Baltic. I'll go through this fast. That's yours truly examining. And what about Stonehenge? Where's the city? There's nothing said. It's as if the people flew in with wings and built this and then flew out again because they only built everything's a ceremonial enclosure. That's how you get an article published. And what about this? I reckon they were close to calling this a ceremonial enclosure as well. It's Maiden Castle. It was obviously a kind of city. Sure, it could have been built in a time of war. These are sheep. This is England's biggest hill fort, perhaps Europe's biggest. Perhaps it was built in a time of war, but damn, this must have been a big war. It's cold up on hills, that's for sure. They call this Iron Age. I don't know what this was, if it was a city or not. If it was, they wouldn't admit to it because there don't seem to be any cities in prehistoric Britain. This one, they're not calling it a prehistoric city. Old Sarum, not too far from Stonehenge. And if you look these things up, you look up Old Sarum, look what it says. It actually says indications of prehistoric settlement have been discovered from as early as 3000 BC. Hill fort in 400 BC, but then they go on to the Saxons. Saxons took over the hill fort, etc., etc., etc. This is one they admit to. And what about the Ridgeway? The Ridgeway goes all the way up. It goes from hill to hill. But where does it go? It doesn't really go anywhere. It doesn't go from any... It sort of goes to Stonehenge, but where does it go? It doesn't. It goes from sort of in the middle of nowhere to in the middle of nowhere. Did they really think that people would build a road from nowhere to nowhere? I mean, what's going on there? If I even look up... I'm going to look up Ridgeway right now. The Ridgeway, an ancient track in southern England. Look, it goes for 140 kilometres. Okay. It goes near Overton Hill, near Avebury, Streatley. Extends from Wiltshire along the chalk ridge of the Berkshire Downs. Okay, so it goes through the middle of the countryside, basically. Because all the cities are gone. You know, there was some kind of catastrophe which hit ancient Britain. Some catastrophe wiped it all out, wiped it clean. Again, Silbury Hill. They say Roman town. More Silbury Hill. And then this guy. Not him, but him. Shakespeare. This is his house. These are some photos I took. His parents' house in Stratford on Avon, which is such a beautiful city. And I think this is the bed he might have been consummated in. And instead of wallpaper, they painted the walls like this back then. Possibly Shakespeare's furniture, possibly not. That's Rowan chips. And in this tent here, we don't need to look at me, we can look at this. Do you know what was in this tent? This is behind his sister's house. I met some archaeologists in here, and they were showing me some results of a nearby excavation. And this is the backyard behind his sister's house. They've extended it because the whole thing's a tourist attraction. They were giving tours, you see. And one of the archaeologists, he handed me like a chip from a cup, and he said, this chip is from Shakespeare's, the Lear of the 16th century. So this could have been Shakespeare's cup. And I thought, wow, this is amazing. And you walk around here, and do you know what some of these are? These are Iron Age storage pits. Why would Iron Age storage pits happen to be in the same place as a future city? It shows that the city is at least Iron Age. And you look up Stratford on Avon, and do they say anything about that? They say Stratford was originally inhabited by Anglo-Saxons and remained a village before the lord of the manor, blah blah blah, sent out plans to develop it into a town in 1196. So something weird is going on. It's as if there's some kind of a cover up, or I'm not sure, or it's hard to say. This is Windsor Castle again. This was a stronghold long before the castle. It's not a Norman moss, and there was an Iron Age village here. These two authors here, Alan Wilson and Baron Blackett, their stuff is absolutely incredible. Lots of their stuff's a bit too radical even for me. But they say a comet hit Britain in the 600s and wiped everything out. I think there could have been something even earlier than that. And don't forget also the Atlantis catastrophe, which was somewhere in the area. And it just wiped everything out. And so ever since, historians have been saying, hey, there were no cities, there were no people. But it's a massive nonsense. Britain was the richest land in the West. It was like Spain. It was full of metal. Guys, thank you very much. And if you enjoyed that, consider subscribing, because I'm never going to stop. This is going to go on and on and on, discovering more and more things again and again and again, okay? Guys, thank you so much. Bye-bye.